Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Ideal Video Blog. I'm your host Wade Fisher, coming to you here from the studio. Had a tremendous show at Beef Cattle Short Course last week. Got to see everybody that we enjoy talking to there and all the cattlemen and producers. A lot of education that they provide there. I think Texas A&M University does a tremendous job with that, with bringing people in to speak, guys that are proficient in their industry to teach everybody how they can do better on their operations. If you missed last week's blog, we had Dr. Temple Grandin on, who was the keynote speaker there, an amazing lady and has done tremendous things for the ag industry as a whole. But this week, I have a special treat for everybody. This is something that while we were down there getting this footage, I was actually shaking. I was so excited about this. But when we were in Wharton talking to Rachel a couple of weeks ago, we slid over to Hungerford to the J.D. Hudgens Inc. office. J.D. Hudgens is one of the top 10 cattle producers in the United States. Those guys do a tremendous job with everything. They take marketing to a new level. They have a lot of overseas as well as foreign markets that they market their genetics to. They all started back in the early 1900s, and then in the late 1930s, during the Depression, came to acquire a bull that has just been synonymous with quality in that breed. His name was Manso. If you've ever been to the J.D. Hudgens office, they do have a head mount of Manso in there. And in just a second, you're going to meet Coleman Locke, who runs the Locke division of J.D. Hudgens. And he's going to talk about how Manso came to be at J.D. Hudgens Inc. This is a story that I had never heard, a story that's just amazing. The luck that they had to get this bull, the way that this bull was traded, and this was all in the Depression when everybody was worried about the times and the times were lean. It's estimated now that approximately 80% of the breed goes back to this one sire. At the end of the video, after Coleman gets done telling the story, you're going to see a short little clip, and the only clip that we've been able to find of Manso. This clip was shot in the 1940s. You'll see him in a group of cows. And you'll look at him, and as today's standards, he's just a bull. But he set today's standards. He is today's standards, and he's what you think about when you think of Brahman cattle. Here's Coleman Locke.
I'm standing by the bull Manso. Manso is an icon in the Brahman business, and we at one time here at J.D. Hudgens said that we estimated that, well, actually we said that ABBA, the Brahman Association, estimated that probably 75% of all the Brahman cattle in the country went back to Manso. I would probably estimate today that 95% of the purebred registered Brahman cattle in the world go back to this old bull. Manso was born in 1926 on the Sartwell Brothers Ranch at Palacios, Texas. And they sold this bull to a lady who lived near Francitas and Leward, Texas. And she was breeding this bull to commercial cattle. She came here to Hungerford in 1932 and told my grandfather, Walter Hudgens, that she had this really great Brahman bull, but that she had used him to the point that she was almost going to have to start breeding him back to his own daughters, and she really hated to do that. So at that point, she decided to replace the bull as best she could. And she asked my grandfather, Walter Hudgens, if he would trade her another bull for Manso. Now, think back to what was happening in 1932. We were in the midst of the Great Depression, and times were really tough, and Walter Hudgens had a great number of Brahman bulls, and I'm sure if he had a great number of Brahman bulls that he had a large feed bill that he needed to pay. So he had lots of bulls. The last thing he really needed was another Brahman bull. He needed some good old-fashioned United States dollars. But he was nice to the lady and listened to her and told her the best thing she could do would be to take that bull and send him to the packer and bring the money up here and select a bull, and he'd help her as best he could. So he sent her home, and she called back the next year and was so insistent that he just had to come look at this really great Brahman bull that she had. So he got in the car, and I tell people that I'm sure a 45-minute drive in 1932 1933 at that point, was not like we think of it as today. We'll run down the road 2 hours and turn the air conditioner on and listen to the radio, and traveling is so easy for us now. But when we think of what he had to do to go down there just to look at that bull, it was a pretty good expedition. It was probably pretty nice of him to do that. But when he got there, he was so impressed with the bull that he saw that he traded Mrs. Gale 4 Brahman bulls for Manso. Now, all my life, I heard this same story, and I've heard it told in different ways. I heard that he traded her 1 bull for Manso even. I've heard that he traded 2 bulls, 3 bulls, and 4 bulls, and I never really knew the true answer to that, and I guess it really didn't matter. But one day we had some visitors here at the ranch, and I was telling this story to these folks, and we had at that time a lady that worked here for 50 years, and this was probably the 49th or 50th year actually of her service here. Her name was Freddie Douglas. Many knew LaRue Douglas, who was a great showman and herdsman. This was LaRue's ex-wife, and she had been here that long and knew just about everything that had gone on here. So she interrupted me. She said, well, I know the answer to that. It's 4. And I said, well, how in the world do you know? Because I knew she wasn't here at that time. So she just reached over to a file cabinet, opened a drawer, and pulled out an envelope. Now, I had a great aunt, Eola Barter, who originally kept the records here on the ranch. She set up the record keeping system and did all the records when they started raising Brahman cattle first. And she had a few trademarks. One was that she used an ink pen. I guess this was in the days before ballpoints were invented. And she used purple ink. So all of our old records are done in ink pen and purple ink. Another thing that we note is that during those tough times, they didn't waste a fresh piece of paper for everything they wanted to write down. They'd save an envelope or a scrap of paper that they had. And she had written on the back of a letter, the envelope that a letter came in, at the top it said, bulls traded to Mrs. Gale for Manso. And she had 4 numbers written there. So Freddie pulls this out, shows this to me. She said, here, this proves that that's what went on. It was 4 bulls. And I said, well, that's pretty interesting, but let's just check that out. Now here at the ranch, in our record keeping system, we have 2 big black books that stay in the safe. One of them has every bull that was ever raised and branded here. One has every heifer that was ever raised and branded here. So I got the bull book out, and I looked these 4 bulls up individually. Written beside each number of each bull was a note, traded to Mrs. Gale for Manso. So I just guess I proved the story at long last after hearing it a number of ways, that those 4 bulls were actually traded to Mrs. Gale for Manso. And so Manso came here in 1933, lived here 10 years and bred cattle, and died in 1943, the year before I was born. So I never got to see Manso. But we do have we have some old movies, a little bit of Manso, which have been transferred to video. So we have video that we've actually seen. They're taken of Manso at an old age, and if you went and looked at the show ring cattle in Houston today and then went straight to a video and looked at that, you wouldn't think much of Manso comparing him with those cattle. But Manso was a great breeding bull and was ahead of his time. A very gentle bull, a moderate bull, but evidently had the potential to make a tremendous mark on the Brahman cattle in the world.